Welcome back to part two, The Rise of the Machines in Cyber Talk with Nikolay and our special guest, Scott Scheferman. One thing that I was thinking is like, well, let's say if you look at this particular space and a couple of years back, actually maybe a year and a half back, the law was passed that allows to perform adversarial operations if you know your adversary. So how would you see or would defenders gonna be at some point able to go in and say, well, I have this really sophisticated piece of equipment, AI, I developed this wonderful code. So now every time somebody comes knocking on my door, I'm going to turn around and launch some kind of attack against my perceived enemy and hopefully I win. Do you see this one is going to evolve into that degree at some point in time? Or are we still going to be playing kind of wait and see who is going to hit us and then we're going to be responding, or we're going to have at least some advantage at some point to say, well, if I see certain things, I don't want to wait until bad things happen. Yes, I can put blocks in place, I can defend myself, but threat actors are not dumb people, so they still going to evolve and they're going to pivot and they're going to try to get into organization. But if I know for sure where the threat actor is, will I be able to train my AI to say, well, here's a thing, something useful for you to do, just go and neutralize the threat actors, or at least they will be incapacitated for a certain period of time before they try to launch different attack and they evolve and figure out something else.
Yeah, so I'm of two minds. I think most honest people should be or are. I've been waiting and wanting to hack back, if you just want to call it that, or offset, for decades. I mean, I got my start in this field after 9/11. 60 of us were hacking the planet trying to figure out where in Afghanistan we found 13 IP addresses. We didn't get very far, but that was in 2001, right? So here we are, 20 plus years later. I think that an organization should have the right to defend itself, but um, we are in this race, and the more the race escalates, including hacking back as a core component of that escalation against adversaries, both nation state and criminal, what happens is it creates momentum that accelerates us even faster. The problem with that acceleration effect is that policies, guidelines, frameworks, legal precedent, all the things that corporations are bound by and need to adhere to and answer to the street, etc., those things certainly aren't going to keep up with that accelerated cyber warfare, if you will, tit for tat kind of battle. If you take some of the stuff I was talking about, like Jeff Sims is working on, let's say someone like him of his mind and ilk took the ISUN TTPs, used several models, developed adversary kind of automated, return fire mechanisms. This is not the stuff of fiction. This is like, you can absolutely do this. You can guarantee that there are organizations and individuals capable of doing this that are already doing this indeed. But if you kind of multiply that out or scale that out, let's say you have the Fortune 50 that are all capable of doing this. Well, I mean, what's going to happen? It's literally going to force this giant race. At the same time, if you can't defend yourself and you are outpaced, you're not as sophisticated, you can't keep up with the threat because it's adaptable, it's polymorphic, it's all the words that make it really hard to defend during a live incident, during DFIR. Once those things become automated and the entire campaign is nearly fully automated from a bad guy's perspective, what are organizations going to do but try to defend, but try to throw denial of service at a command and control server, or break into a criminal command and control chat service in order to disrupt that operation? Because at some point, these attacks, their impacts, their to the organization get to a level of disruption that it comes down to an existential threat for that organization. We've already seen organizations go completely out of business after a ransomware attack, right? I've seen that myself firsthand. So this is an existential type of thing for organizations to have to contend with, and none of them are at all, I guess, prepared or positioned or willing to budget and allocate for this discrete problem we're talking about, or this challenge and dynamic we're talking about.
Got it. Got Yeah, it's definitely not a walk in the park and not a piece of cake to go through all of this. So if you think in terms of, let's say, we were talking about defenders and threat actors, and I keep my kind of brain always goes into this direction that what potential and yeah, we can say sky's the limit, and threat actors can do whatever they feel like it, but I think everywhere there is a limit. So if you look at attacks that threat actors were perpetrating, they somewhat not really going far advanced, like you mentioned at the beginning, and definitely they write better emails and they write more persuasive emails, so they don't have any grammar issues or other problems that they used to have that we taught people are taught employees to say through security awareness training, this is what you need to do. Look for all those grammatical errors, look for mistakes that they're making, look for what they're trying to do. And usually they use simple language earlier on in those handwritten emails, if you will. But when they switch to AI, you can see certainly difference that emails are more persuasive and a little bit more sophisticated, and the language is better. So they don't use those simple sentences anymore. So, how far do you think they're gonna take, let's say, in the next 5 years, and what would you expect, or what would you say we should expect is coming down the pipe? And I know it's hard to predict because again, possibilities are endless, but they still kind of, if you look at which direction they head in, they're not really trying to throw everything under the sun into AI and say, create me next. I don't know, Frankenstein and throw this Frankenstein at everyone and see which organization is going to die. They still evolve around ransomware, data exfiltrations, and they're just trying to get this different things working to get this information out and then hold it for ransom because it seems like what it works at this particular moment. So, from your perspective, where do you see threat actors or how far is it going to take?
Well, what I would focus on there is what we kind of already know about. Let's say, just take instead of APTs, let's focus on the criminal, hacking apparatus. So we already know how matrixed out those organizations are, right? With the Conti Group had what, hundreds of people, dozens of devs, R&D, help desk, all these things. There's ransomware as a service, there's access brokers. We know these things today. But now that we know these things, if you imagine that with AI, each one of them becomes better at their own specialized service or skill or function. And as a result, the whole thing from the time a threat actor group leader conceives of their campaign to the time where they're executing that campaign, let's say that normally takes 3 months. But with AI, what happens is that concept um, quickly can assemble. And just like we use, let's say, Perplexity and Claude, Sonnet 3.5, or ChatGPT to synthesize multiple resources and to say, what is the best version of this? How do I put that with this together? With these humans be able to real time educate themselves in order to knock through problems and develop a full campaign, you're going to just have this economy that is hyper has hypervelocity. So that's probably in the next year or two. I wouldn't even go out as far as 5 years to say that that's probably going to be the first thing that we notice and feel, is just the velocity at which new campaigns with fresh ideas, fresh infrastructure, fresh code on malware, fresh and the velocity of vulnerability discovery is going to be through the roof, because you have the entire IT supply chain, as you know from our past conversation, getting leaked because they're not paying the ransom. So you have all this intellectual property at the core foundation of computing. Well, when you apply AI to that, you're able to discover vulnerabilities extremely quickly. So what we call zero to today, I mean, maybe we'll start calling them AI vulns, because they're discovered almost as fast as you need them. Does that make sense? Like it's going to be everything more, but also everything more importantly faster. In 5 years, I'd almost need to just contemplate that for a while to really synthesize something that's more than just me shooting from the hip, because I don't think I can see that far. I can't really see past 3 years, to be honest, in terms of what this whole thing's going to look like. I just know that the motives are always going to be there. The risk takers and criminals are always going to be there. That the law will largely be behind. That defense systems and protection systems will lag. And so I just see this acceleration where this becomes, really the most important pillar of what makes for a functioning society. Because we have everything right now digital, everything right now in third party um, data centers, everything right now through third party services. We're matrixed out like the bad guys are, right? Everything we're doing is via just in time, is via third parties, everything as a service. These create these systemic single points of failure throughout our entire economy. And once those things start getting cracked, instead of ransoming an organization, holding it hostage for its money, why not hold entire swaths of customers that rely on a single service or a single supplier for a supply chain and collect the ransoms from all of their downstream customers too? I can't do that today as a bad guy. Tomorrow I should be able to, because I will know all of those customers. I will know their dependencies. I will know how important and valuable that is to them, right? And we're already seeing this play out at the earliest levels in the supply chain. But when you add AI to that and we talk about that accelerant, I think in 5 years that's really going to be the name of the game. Is they'll be make a lot more money systematically attacking single points of failure throughout the entire economy.
Yeah, it's interesting, Scott. And like when you start talking about supply chain, I was thinking while you were talking about, well, we know that we have supply chains, and you described very well. Threat actors, they have their own supply chains. They establish all these networks, and they're actually functioning very well. And probably to a certain degree, we can learn from whatever they establish, but it's hard problem to solve. And I'm thinking it's like, when are we going to start disrupting their supply chains and introducing all those problems that all those money mules cannot really get the money out? Because the way I see it, everything that was happening, it just totally agree with you on this hyper speed and hyperscale that everything is going to be happening. And whatever we saw on one-offs things happening, they're going to start increasing the gun can bear and bigger. And right now, majority of news they come in basically ransomware. And ransomware payouts becoming bigger and bigger. Used to be in thousands, or average like 40, 50, maybe 100,000 payouts. Now there are millions. Nobody is coming and asking for give me 100,000. Usually every single breach that happened out there, it's 5+ millions, and the latest ones were like what 80 millions payout that organizations ended up paying. So it's like having that supply chain that threat actors have, they need to move this money. They're not gonna just get distributed on their own, or they're gonna end up sitting in a bank, and companies will be able to pull them out. So they build those networks, and somehow we have difficult time to disrupting those networks, and that's kind of a little bit frustrating on my part. It's like they're doing everything to us, we cannot do anything to them, and then we have like single shots. It's like, okay, we took this network of bots down. It's like, okay, great. They rebuild that networks months later, and they do that again, and they're sending out all those emails and do the same thing. So I think so. One thing that I would be interested to hear from you, it's what's the coolest thing you've seen in AI right now that can help people like you and I in cybersecurity to defend ourselves. Because there are many different things that every company is working, but have you come across anything that caught your eyes and like, wow, this is really, maybe it's not the biggest, maybe it's not the most advanced, but totally helps me to solve my problems, and what kind of AI powered technology have you seen?
Yeah. Well, let me preface that with an observation that you made, which is, how do we kind of attack them? And then you kind of transition to how do you defend yourself, right? So maybe a two-part answer there. But like if you look at ISON, they figured out that the Chinese government figured out through that apparatus. how to own three telcos in a certain region of the world. And they automated that just like that. Each one of those telcos were found to have hundreds of CVEs, all exploitable, and all of that was automated. And they basically own the telcos. So we can conversely own attacker infrastructure. We can conversely own data centers that are known to host command and control and host malware payloads and host that provide infrastructure or tunneling for influence campaigns, etc. Right? So you can do that. It brings us back to that kind of discussion about like once you kind of go that route, then the return fire is definitely coming right back at you. So I think every nation and organization is reluctant to really engage to the degree that we are technically capable of doing so. Of course, we at the nation state level, I'll call it the West, are very capable at infiltrating other organizations and nation states. I still think like for example, the United States is by far the most powerful force in that regard. And I imagine there are folks that do that all the time and have the mission and the objective to do that. But the law enforcement is now finally getting more willing to take over command and control infrastructure. We saw that with Germany kind of led the way. What was that? Probably 4 or 5 years ago now, where they brought down and hacked into the infrastructure, without permission, if you will, to bring down an entire apparatus for a criminal network. And I know that's happened and played out several times. We had Ladybird, we had the TrickBot Conti takedown. There's a lot of things that we're starting to do. And I feel like what we're doing now is kind of sharpening our saw and saying, how does this look? We got the legal side, like Microsoft helped with that takedown from a legal side. We have offensive military kind of counterparts. We have law enforcement stuff. We have trust groups that work in these kind of tiger teams to try to tackle some of these imminent threats. So I think that we're getting better at getting ahead by taking the battle to them, if that makes sense, to disrupt them, to slow down that same operation that we're worried about speeding up as we go forward. A lot of this is just like who can slow each other down the most. So I think that's how I would answer that part of it. For the how do you protect yourself side, I don't have a whole roster, and I hate to throw out a single vendor, but I just happened to have a conversation with an old friend the other day with a company called Strike Ready, and they're using a lot of really cool AI things to do what we've already been trying to do with like SIM and SOAR and XDR and understanding things through the lens of AI and enrichment, but they're using some newer cool stuff, some better AI. They had the advantage of starting later, so their approach and their AI approach and everything, their application of AI is a little bit more new school, right? It's the latest and greatest, if you will. And they also, to answer your question, they have like I think they've got like 600 connectors to site. I think there's like 3,600 security vendors out there right now. So they got like a sixth of those, and probably the most important, biggest, and best ones that are the most commonly used. And you can all just pipe right in to via API to this apparatus that's able to really infer quickly what the most important threats are to action, automate those actions, orchestrate those actions, etc. My hope is that type of ability to quickly ingest from all of your existing infrastructure and IT and cyber alerts and everything else, and synthesize quickly how to deal with a situation in the context of DFIR. I think that would be a really good step for the industry to focus on because, you know, it's age old to say that you can't really prevent all these breaches. It's a matter of if not when, etc. But we really don't do well at DFIR as much as my friends and colleagues are brilliant and really do their best. I feel like there's a giant space of opportunity for us to get really good at like instantly locking down the most critical functions of a business so that it can stay operational even in the face of a worm or a ransomware, etc., that we can adapt and self-heal. And these are the things that we used to talk about like with science fiction with like self-healing networks, but I'll be damned if we're not there. Like we can do this thing. We just need to put a lot of resources and focus on this. And again, have the ability to ingest all the existing technology stacks super fast and make sense of it really fast without having to build a giant cloud model in order to, we need to do this stuff real time in memory. Does that make sense? And if we get to that level of like speed and decision making and automation in terms of pushing through those APIs, blocks and isolations, and all, firewall changes, and all those kind of things that you would need to do. Like, for example, why today can't we say in the face of a ransomware incident or a worm that I can snap my fingers and just disable SMB across the entire enterprise, across all firewalls, all aspects of the Purdue model? Why can't I instantly turn off all RDP immediately the second one of these adversaries is in the environment? These are the kind of things that I think are no-brainers for the industry to solve for, because certainly the intelligence and the confidence is there. We just need to build the damn thing, and execute.
Yeah, Scott, definitely. We just need to build the damn thing, and that's been discussion for the past 10 years. We're still building. Yes, there's plenty of room to improve,
Yeah.
and but we've come a long way too. It's like if you look at the first instance in 2013, APT1, Mandiant published, and to where we are today, tools improved, a lot of things improved, but again, the guys on the other side of the fence, they're not sitting idle by, so they continuously evolving. So that's the
That's right.
challenge that we described. So looks like we're coming up to the top of the hour, and
Mm.
I think we're gonna keep it interesting. And I'm gonna leave two topics: copyright and privacy, with AI and cyber, because that's actually pretty big meaty things that we can discuss for later. And at this point, I'd like to ask you what thoughts you want to leave our audience with, and what would you like to impress them to say to watch out, to look for, and how to do things better.
Yeah, well, broadly speaking, if I can say one thing to the audience, it's that, we're in this renaissance of AI. We've been in it for a minute, but we're only just getting started. And what's really needed is a creative mindset and the ability to really direct the solutions towards outcomes, rather than asking, what can we do with AI? Ask what are the most important outcomes we need to solve for now, and then figure out how to do that thing. And that's really what's plagued the industry even before AI, but it continues to plague the industry. The other thing is, how do we figure out incentives? I think it was Stuart McClure from Silence. You'll remember, there's a lot of money being made not fully solving this problem by security vendors. If you had perfectly secure environments, nobody would make any money through OpEx and renewals and cross sells and all the things. So I think we need to stop like monetizing. I would ask Microsoft to not monetize their security functionality as part of their solution. I would like it to bake it in from a design premise as a principle from the inside out, to design everything anew with security as the primary foundation for the next decade of compute. I would like the hardware supply chain to be incentivized to do basic rudimentary like software development lifecycle security, SSDLC, so that we end up with firmware and code that's shared across the entire IT supply chain that doesn't have 20-year-old vulnerabilities and the CVSS score 10 phones. Like, these are things the human race needs to be able to solve for, whether it's through policy enforcement. Use every apparatus you can, including the legal arm. I hate to create a firestorm of legal soup where lawyers are making billions of dollars countersuing all third parties throughout the supply chain. But if we don't do something, this thing is not going to fix itself. So I would say to everybody, as a practitioner or a leader, you need to embrace AI to your fullest extent as a person. You need to use AI every day of your life. You need to understand what this thing actually is and get to the nature of that beast, because you're not going to make good decisions if you're not fully immersed and studying it every single day. I dedicate a half hour a day to the only looking at AI. I use the Perplexity app. It's got a news section, the latest AI news and inventions and benchmarks that were. All these things are so important to keep track of. So that's what I would really say to everybody. It's like, embrace it and then solve for problems that you have, rather than try to imagine what you can do with the AI. It's just that simple. If we could just fix that, and then add the right incentives to it as a society, I think we're gonna get there, and AI can be our friend. It's largely our friend already. We don't talk about it, but AI is saving our lives every single day. It's magnificent. It's beautiful. It's nothing more than intelligence, and humans love intelligence, right? Call it artificial, call it whatever you want, but it's intelligence. Leverage that intelligence for yourself, your organization, your family, what you want to get out of life. Like, that's what you should use AI for. And just know that the onslaught of criminals and nation states leveraging it is not going to slow down too. So get smart and get ahead of it.
Yeah, definitely, I can hear you, Scott. And you said one phrase which is kind of resonated. It's like, yeah, we cannot sit there and imagining how bad or how good things gonna be without really taking step forward. So just taking this one little step at a time, learning something, applying to what I already been doing, and making it better is going to make the whole ecosystem better over time. So we cannot just jump from here to there and say I'm going to be in 2050 by tomorrow. It's not going to happen. You just need to get through another 26 years of whatever is going to bring, and every year could be different, every day could be different, but it's up to us to embrace it and move forward with it. So with that said, thank you, Scott. Appreciate you coming on. Always fun to have conversation with you. And I'm sure we're going to be doing it again. So to the audience, thank you for tuning in. And until next time, remember, we're stronger together. Embrace AI and watch out for our next topic coming online. Thank you, everyone. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us. For more information about these topics or IS Squared, please go to www.issquaredinc.com.